Let's have a look at square roots when we're dealing with indices. So a couple of little reminders here for us. So when we're trying to find the square root of a number, we're trying to find a number that when multiplied by itself produces that given number. So for example, if I'm trying to find the square root of 16, I want to find the number which when multiplied by itself gives me that value of 16. And so that number is 4. And so that's why the square root of 16 is equal to 4. So that's doing the opposite, and the opposite of square root is raising it to the power of 2, or squaring a number. So for example, square root of 81, we want to find the number which when multiplied by itself equals 81. Now that number is 9. So 9 times itself is equal to 81. So that means the square root of 81 is equal to 9. So that's our background information. Here's the actual rules that we use. So if I'm given something as a square root of a number, it's the same as me writing it as a power of a half. Equally, if I have a to the power of n, that's the same as me writing as a to the power of n over 2. Let's have a look at how this actually works. So this is just to try and lead you to understanding the rule. If I was multiplying two numbers here, both base a, because it's the same base, that's going to give me a base of 5. Then, because I've got two powers, power of a half and power of a half, I would add those. Now, half plus a half is 1, so that's the same as 5 to the power of 1. Okay, so then the opposite of that, so that's going back, it's finding the number when multiplied by itself gives us that answer. So let's have a look at using the rule here. So I've got the square root of x. So I'm going to write down the x. Now I'm lazy. There is a square root in there, but we don't write that square root normally. We're just too lazy to write it, okay? But we need to know that it's there. And that's where I get that power of a half from. So this is the same as x to the power of 1. So I write down x to the power of 1. It's a square root, and that's why I'm doing divided by 2 in the power. We're going to use that same idea for the next one. The number is x, well, the variable or term is x to the power of 4. So I'm just going to write down x to the power of 4. Then I need to deal with the square root part. And that means I'm going to take the power and divide by 2. Now 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that's the same as x squared. And what that is saying in terms of our square root here is it's saying if I did x squared times itself, then that would give me x to the power of 4. And so that's why the square root of that is equal to itself. Okay. Let's try this last one. So it's got 3 parts to it. So I need to find the cubed root of 3, the cubed root of y cubed, and the cubed root of z. So I've got 3 parts that I need to deal with. So I'm going to take the number first. That's 3 to the power of 1, which we're lazy, we don't normally write, but I'm going to write down that 1. And it's the square root, so I'm going to divide that by 2. Then I'm going to take y to the power of 3 and write that down. Y to the power of 3. And then I need to deal with the square root, so divide that by 2. Then I'm going to take z, which is z to the power of 1, and divide that by 2 because that's our square root sign. This is now going the opposite direction. This is going back to surd form. So surd form, when we use that word surd, that's another way of saying square root. So I want to return something. If I've got this here, a to the power of a half, then that's the same as a to the power of 1, and we want to find the square root of it. If I have here b to the power of 5 over 2, so write down the b to the power of 5, and then the square root means there's my divide by 2 power. Now the same thing for the last one here. So that's 7 to the power of 1. So I'm going to put that, just going to write that 7 to the power of 1 in a slightly different way. I'm going to write that because I want to have divided by 2 in all of my powers here. So I know that 2 divided by 2 is the same as 1. Same with the a here. So that's got 8 to the power of 8. So that power of 8, I want to write that as something divided by 2. So something divided by 2 is equal to 8. That something is 16. And then I've got my b to the power of 3 over 2. So now that I've got all of those as divided by 2 in the power, now I can convert to the square root. So there's my square root, and I'm going to have 7 squared, a to the power of 16, b to the power of 3.